All right, well, we'll move to the last matter on the agenda, Senate Bill 105, Senator Jones, second. This came out of, I forget which subcommittee, but it was recommended out of subcommittee B. All right, Senator Jones, you want to proceed?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Senate Bill 105, which has two main components. One is that a person is charged with a half an ounce of marijuana, they would have a fine only of a maximum fine of $300. And then if it's between over 1 ounce, over 1 ounce to 2 ounces, it would be a misdemeanor. Currently, the law in Georgia is that if you have, thank you. Currently, the law in Georgia is that if you have up to 1 ounce, it is a misdemeanor. And then if you have above 1 ounce, it is a felony. And of course, a felony carries punishment between 1 to 10 years, and of course, you lose the right to vote. You lose scholarships, food stamps, not for life anymore, but federal loans, lost job opportunities. Most of the persons who would be convicted of this charge of the felony possession may not go to jail, but the argument, of course, is that they experience all of these other adverse consequences just basically for possessing only 2 ounces of marijuana. And what I want to kind of lay out is just to give an idea about how the process kind of works. So, and what the prosecutors have in their toolbox, so to speak. When a prosecutor has a case, when they have this kind of case on possession, they actually have the option of charging with just possession or possession with intent to distribute. And possession with intent to distribute can be any amount. Possession to intent to distribute can be any amount. It's not limited to 1 ounce or 2 ounces. And I would just bring to the committee's attention a couple of cases, just give you a couple of ideas. In the case of Cotton versus State, a defendant had $60 in his pocket, 2.7 grams of marijuana, 2.7. 28 grams is what right now what constitutes a misdemeanor. But it was bagged separately. And so the young man was charged with possession with intent, was convicted, and that conviction was upheld. Just give you another quick case. Henderson versus State, the person had separate bags of marijuana. Did not equal to 1 ounce. It was not weighed. There were no scales. There were no money. There were no smoking devices. But the deputy testified that what he saw, in his expert opinion, was not for personal use. And based just on that testimony, they were able to get a successful prosecution for possession with intent. So a prosecutor, when he's looking at these cases, they have two things in their toolbox. And one, they have the statute, which you'll see in SB 105, says that intent to distribute is any amount. That's number one. Number two, they have the case law, which gives them wide latitude. So you can have things such as a pipe, you can have things such as money, the way it's bagged, and you see in this case 2.7 grams, possession with intent. Also, what a prosecutor has is they can use the deputy to give what they call expert testimony. A deputy, not an expert that we have to hire out of Atlanta or something of that nature, but a deputy who has been working at the sheriff's department, has experience arresting persons for marijuana, can be qualified as an expert, and he can say in his expert opinion that marijuana that he sees is not for personal use. So that's what a prosecutor has. That's what they have in their toolbox. So what we're saying is that when a prosecutor, remember this is the prosecutor who makes this determination, it's not the defendant, it's not the defense attorney. When a prosecutor sees that a person has between 1 ounce and 2 ounces, and they make the determination that the only reason that they believe that this person had that was for personal use, should that person then be charged with a felony? And it only goes up to 2 ounces. But remember, the prosecutor is making that determination. So the prosecutor has the statute at his or her disposal. He or she also knows the case law. And they're making the decision that the only reason I think this person has it is for their personal use. Does the state have an overriding interest to say that that person must be convicted of a felony, with all of the adverse consequences that it has. And that is that aspect of this particular bill, Mr. Chairman. The second aspect is the part saying that it's up to a half an ounce, it would be just up to a fine of $300. That is not unusual. Many states do that. I would point out that even the state of Mississippi actually does that. They use infractions for the first 3 counts. Your first 3 counts lifetime are up to 30 grams is actually an infraction. It's not a criminal offense at all. So if you prosecute it once, twice, 3 times, and it's no more than 30 grams, that is an infraction. It's not even a misdemeanor. It is an infraction, and that's in the state of Mississippi. Georgia, where do we stand right now? 42 states either do not prosecute felony possession of marijuana, or their limits are actually higher than Georgia. And it actually goes further than that. If you look at what I call the deep red states, meaning those states that have a Republican governor and a Republican House and Senate, those persons, there's 24 states like that. Georgia ranks number 21. 24 states which have a Republican governor and a Republican House and Senate. As far as our treatment of marijuana, we rank number 21, with only Tennessee, South Carolina, and Florida actually treating marijuana more harshly than we do. And so, when we talk about, is this unusual? It is not unusual at all. Other states actually do this. And the fact is, there's so many other potential crimes that we treat as a misdemeanor. If a person is struck, simple battery is a misdemeanor. If a person is hit, a visible injury takes place, that is a misdemeanor. If a person runs from a deputy, that is a misdemeanor. Obstruction of law enforcement officers is a misdemeanor. So there's a lot of things that we treat as misdemeanors. So a prosecutor who may actually want to charge someone who beat someone up with a higher crime is stuck with a misdemeanor. A person who has committed domestic violence in front of the children, if it is their first time, even though we know how detrimental that is, that young person who sees that DV case is more prone to commit domestic violence, the prosecutor is stuck with the misdemeanor. And so what this bill does is say, when the prosecutor, who's looking, without a doubt, having been one for 12 years, they're looking to hit them with the higher charge. But they say, I only think that this person had this for possession only. Is it in the state's interest to say that that person should be charged with a felony? And that's the purpose of this bill. And it only is that class of persons between 1 and 2 ounces.
All right, thank you. We have a question, I believe, from Senator Hill.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I've followed this issue and spoken many times offline with Harold. I don't have any need for debate or questions at the appropriate time. I wanted to move to pass.
All right. We have Senator Kennedy?
That's me.
No, sir.
Oh, Senator Good.
Yeah. Question for the author. So how many marijuana cigarettes can be made from 2 ounces of marijuana?
I'm not an expert in that. The experts that I've talked to say that you cannot actually, it would be quite a few that it would take.
It'd be quite a few,
It would
right?
be quite a few.
So if I'm carrying 2 ounces with me, then it's probably, I'm looking for a party, right? It's probably not just for my personal consumption. I'm probably going to.
That I can't answer, but the key point is this. It's not what I would think.
Right.
It's what that prosecutor who sits there and says, looking at whatever evidence is in front of them,
Right.
that they believe that it's only for possession. And they'll have all the evidence there. They'll know, remember now, this person's been arrested. They'll know where they were going. They'll know who they were with. They'll know how it was bagged. They have more information than we can discuss. And they make that determination that they believe it is for personal use only. And remember that, even if you say it's a party, it's still for personal use. But also, I always kind of make the example of how do we look at someone if they had, we don't charge somebody if they had on a Saturday in Athens, a half a gallon of Jack Daniels with a felony. Now that person who has that, it may be for personal use, but we know it ain't gonna end up good that night.
Okay.
Senator Tillery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, thank you for bringing this bill. I've got a question about you. You brought up the state of Mississippi and said that up to a third lifetime, I guess,
Correct.
conviction's not the right word, but arrest with marijuana is just an infraction. I'm taking the term infraction to mean ticket. Is that?
Well, it depends on how they want to prosecute it. When I say infraction, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's just a ticket. They can arrest. They can't arrest. I mean, I don't know whether they arrest or just give the ticket, but by an infraction, what we really mean is the punishment does not go up past 6 months. That's what we're really talking about here. So.
My question then is, in your bill, if there was a third or a fourth infraction in your bill, is there any escalation to the $300, or is it $300 even on your 20th?
In this one here, it was no escalation, but you know that is certainly something that can be looked at. Certainly, Mississippi is not a bad example as far as saying, okay, first, second, third are infractions, fine only, and actually they provide for jail time, but it's just not beyond 6 months. And so that is certainly a model that I may be amenable to looking at.
Thank you.
All right. See no further questions. We have James Bell. I think
Yes, sir. I want you to sit down and just be as brief as possible. I think the senator has outlined this bill. I think it's a very good bill. I think it's a very practical bill. Consider this: 28 grams of misdemeanor, 29 grams of felony, up to 1 year, up to 10 years. I think it's kind of using a sledgehammer when we should maybe using a fly swat, that type of analogy. It does not involve enforcement of DUI laws. It does not involve, as he mentioned, distribution or intent to distribute. So I encourage this committee to pass this bill, and I think it's going to be a very positive thing for Georgia. Many states around us have up to 4 ounces being misdemeanor, and Georgia has some of the toughest marijuana laws in the state. And so, considering all the criminal justice reform, I'd like for at least you to consider this bill. Thank you, Mr.
the only other person signed up was Thomas Weaver. I don't believe he's still here. Anyone else wish to be heard? All right, hearing none, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Move to pass.
Second.
All right, motion by Kurt Thompson and second by Senator McCoon. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
No.
All right. Senator Ligon and Senator Kurt. Any other no's? Okay. Thank you. And there being no further business on the agenda, we're dismissed.